The first night, I thought it was just a bad dream. You know the kind, where the silence in your room feels too heavy, like it's pressing on your chest, and your eyes snap open without knowing why. That's what happened to me. I woke up in a sweat, rolled over, and checked my phone. The time, 3:33 a.m. A perfect symmetry. Oddly satisfying, if not for the pulse of dread I felt looking at it. I live alone. One-bedroom apartment, 3rd floor. Deadbolt on the front door, chain 2, just for good measure. I don't scare easily. But something about that moment felt wrong. Not something's off wrong, more like a warning, primal and electric, vibrating just under my skin. I shifted under the blankets, ready to chalk it up to anxiety or a noise from the street. But then I saw it. A silhouette. It was faint, but unmistakable. Standing at the far corner of my room, near the closet. It wasn't doing anything. Just standing there. I blinked. Rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, it was gone. Maybe my eyes played tricks on me. I wanted to believe that. So I told myself it was a shadow from the hallway light, or a weird shape cast by the coat rack. I slept with the bedside lamp on for the rest of the night. The second night, I set up the night vision camera. It's one of those cheap ones I used to use for security when I traveled. I pointed it toward my bed from across the room, figuring it might give me peace of mind. I told myself I was being paranoid. I woke again at 3:33 a.m. same time. Same weight in the air. This time, I didn't look around. I couldn't. Something told me not to move. My eyes stayed shut. I kept perfectly still, listening. There was no sound, no creaking floorboards, no movement. Just silence thick enough to choke on. In the morning, I reviewed the footage. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the camera picked up something. It wasn't clear, more like a distortion in the air, a tall, elongated shape near my bed. It stood there for 7 minutes, completely motionless, and then vanished. Not walked away. Not faded. Just blinked out of the frame. I told myself it was a glitch. A trick of the lens. But I saved the video anyway. That was a week ago. I've woken up every night at 3:33 a.m. since. And every night, the silhouette is a little closer. I tried not to panic. That first video could have been anything, a camera malfunction, a bug crawling across the lens, even light distortion. I told myself these things like mantras. But the second video? No way to explain that one. The figure wasn't just there, it had moved. Night 2, 3:33 a.m. again. I woke up to that same paralyzing weight in the room. And this time, I heard something. A sound like breathing. Slow, steady, ragged. I didn't open my eyes. I couldn't. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. At 3:33 a.m., it appeared again, this time halfway between the closet and the bed. It didn't walk. It just glitched forward. One frame it was across the room. The next, it was 5 feet closer. Still motionless. Still watching. I froze the frame and stared at the screen. The shape was wrong. Too tall. Limbs slightly too long. Its outline shimmered, like heat rising off pavement, and where a face should have been, nothing. Just a smooth black void. I called my friend Sam. She's into paranormal stuff, always has been. I didn't tell her everything, just hinted at weird sleep issues and strange dreams. She offered to come over with her EMF reader and some sage, half joking, half serious. She came that night. We set up the camera again, this time in night vision and infrared mode, and she burned the sage while laughing about banishing spooky vibes. I almost relaxed. That night, I didn't wake up at 3:33. I woke up at 3:34. 1 minute late. When I opened my eyes, the room was cold. Freezing. I could see my breath fogging the air, even though the thermostat was at 72. And there, standing right next to the bed, was the silhouette. Closer than ever. Maybe 3 feet away. It didn't move. Didn't breathe. I couldn't scream. Couldn't speak. All I could do was stare into that faceless shape, my mind screaming silently while my body refused to budge. And then, it tilted its head. Just slightly. Like it was studying me. I blinked, and it was gone. Sam was already awake when I stumbled into the living room. "Dude," she said, holding up her phone. "You need to see this." On the video, the shape appeared again. This time, it didn't just stand there. It reached out, one impossibly long arm stretching toward me as I slept. The frame glitched right as its fingers touched the edge of my blanket. Then it vanished. Sam looked pale. That wasn't a camera glitch. No. It wasn't. That thing is getting closer. And it's not stopping. Sam wanted to stay another night. She said she was worried about me, but I think she was more curious than anything, drawn to the unknown like a moth to a bug zapper. I didn't argue. I didn't want to be alone. We moved the camera closer to the bed, right on the dresser this time, pointed dead center. Sam even set up her phone with motion detection alerts. I didn't think anything would come of it, but we were desperate for some kind of explanation. At 3:33 a.m., I woke up again. But not to the silence. Not to the wait. To movement. There was a sound. A rustling. Slow dragging across the hardwood floor. I kept still, barely breathing. The figure was there, but not like before. It wasn't standing at the foot of the bed. It was crouched, arms too long, knees bent backward like a deer that had forgotten how legs work. Its head was inches from mine. I could feel the heat of it, except it wasn't warm. It was wrong. Like the memory of warmth turned cold. I shut my eyes tight. When I opened them again, it was gone. Sam burst into the room maybe 20 seconds later, holding her phone. It triggered. It moved. "You okay?" I nodded, though I didn't feel okay. We watched the footage together. The thing didn't blink into the room this time. It crawled. On all fours, it dragged itself from the hallway into the bedroom, jerking with each step like a marionette whose strings were being yanked by an invisible puppeteer. It stopped at my side and just stared. That blank face was inches from mine. But that's not what got to me. It wasn't just looking. It was mouthing something. Sam zoomed in, frame by frame. The figure's mouth didn't open in a normal way. It unfolded, like peeling apart layers of dark velvet. No teeth. No tongue. Just that endless dark. And the words? We couldn't hear them, but we saw the motion. The same syllables repeated again and again. Almost ready. That's what it was saying. Almost ready for what? Sam didn't stay the next night. She left in a hurry, muttering something about needing to cleanse her apartment just in case. I didn't blame her. I couldn't. Because part of me wanted to run, too. But I couldn't. Something told me if I left, it would follow. And I was right. Because the fourth night, it didn't wait until 3:33. It came early. And it brought something new with it. It started at 2:41 a.m. I remember that clearly because I just glanced at the clock, feeling that same creeping unease, like the air had gone dense and too still. But this time, it came early. No warning. No slow build. Just sound. A low hum, deep enough to rattle my bones. At first I thought it was the heater groaning to life, but the noise didn't come from the vents, it came from under the bed. I froze. Something about that frequency felt ancient. It wasn't just a sound, it was felt, like it was inside my skull, vibrating in my teeth. I reached for my phone to check the feed, but the screen was black. Camera offline. That's when the whispering started. Voices, not just one, but many. Layered on top of each other. Soft, frantic, like a crowd murmuring in a church right before a funeral starts. The words didn't make sense at first. Like they were being spoken backward. But then one phrase cut through, clear as day. Don't move. It's watching. I didn't move. The sound shifted, became sharper, closer. And then I saw the silhouette again. Not standing. Not crouching. Hanging. It was suspended in midair, upside down, inches from the ceiling, its limbs dangling like dead branches. Its head was craned toward me, slowly rotating until its faceless void met my eyes. And then it did something it had never done before. It moved its hand. Not toward me, but toward something else. The closet. And from the darkness there, something stepped out. Smaller. Quieter. Not a silhouette, something that resembled a human shape but blurred at the edges, like it couldn't quite exist here. It had no feet. It floated, just an inch off the ground. Its face, no, faces. Too many of them, shifting in and out of each other. Familiar ones. My mother. A childhood friend. My own reflection. The hanging figure nodded slowly, as if acknowledging the arrival. Then, they both vanished. No flicker. No glitch. They slid out of reality, as if someone had closed a curtain between dimensions. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, the camera came back online. I checked the footage. It had recorded nothing, just static from 240 to 350. Except, there was one single frame at the end. A black screen with white text, written in handwriting that looked almost like mine. You're almost ready. And below that, scribbled so faintly I nearly missed it. We remember who you were. That message. We remember who you were. It dug into me like a hook behind the ribs. Not what I are. Not what I am. Who I was. Like I'd forgotten something important. I spent the next day in a fog, pacing the apartment, replaying every moment of the night before. The hanging figure. The thing from the closet. The message. And always, that question looped in my head, who do they think I was? That night, I made a choice. I set up 3 cameras, one in the bedroom, one in the hallway, one in the closet. I didn't sleep. I waited, lights off, perched on the edge of my bed like a soldier waiting for the first gunshot. Nothing happened at 2:30. Nothing at 3 o'clock. But exactly at 3:33, every light in the apartment turned on at once. Bright. Blinding. And then, every bulb shattered. The sound was deafening. Glass rained down like a miniature storm. I fell to the floor, hands over my head. My ears rang with a silence so loud it felt like I'd been submerged underwater. When I looked up, the hallway camera had turned. Not physically, but on its feed, the image now faced me. My face, pale, terrified, lit by the glow of the screen. Except, the screen wasn't just showing now. It was showing memories. Flashes. Moments from childhood. Me, at 6 years old, standing in front of a mirror, crying. A woman's voice behind me, whispering. Not my mother. Another flash. Me, at 11, in a basement I didn't recognize. Candles. Symbols drawn in chalk. My hands shaking. Another flash. Me, at 18, standing in a circle of strangers wearing masks made of glass. All of them watching something I couldn't see. The final flash, me, lying in a hospital bed, hooked to machines. My eyes wide open, unmoving. As if I were already dead. Then, black. Then, words. We called you back. The part that escaped. I felt sick. I remembered none of that. But deep down, something shifted. Like a door creaking open inside me. Not fully, just enough to let the draft in. I checked the camera footage again, desperately hoping it had captured those flashes. It hadn't. But it had caught one thing. From 3:33 to 3:36, the figure stood in the center of my room. Not moving. Not staring. Writing. With a finger, it scratched something into my bedroom wall. I hadn't seen it until I moved the dresser aside. There, etched deep into the drywall. You were one of us. I stared at the message on the wall until sunrise. You were one of us. It felt impossible, like being told your whole life was someone else's dream. I kept whispering to myself, I don't remember. I don't remember. But the more I said it, the less sure I became. I called Sam. This time she didn't answer. Her voicemail was full. Her socials, silent. Her apartment across town. Empty. I drove there. I needed to see for myself. The door was ajar. No signs of struggle. But every mirror in her apartment was smashed. Shards of reflective glass littered the floor like confetti from a celebration no one survived. On her wall, written in something that looked too dark to be ink, was the same phrase etched into mine. You were one of us. Beneath it, you brought it through. I left. Fast. That night, I tore open every box in my storage closet, hunting for something, anything, from before the silhouette started visiting me. Old journals, photos, receipts. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for until I found it. A book. Not one I remembered buying. Its leather cover was cracked with age, and the symbol pressed into the front wasn't anything I recognized, a circle of jagged lines, almost like teeth. Inside were handwritten pages. Dozens. Some in my handwriting, others not. It was a ritual log. Page after page dated over several years, all in the same format. Date. Phase of the moon. Substance offered. Time of visitation. And every entry ended the same way. Confirmed presence at 3:33 a.m. One entry chilled me more than the rest. June 21st, summer solstice. Phase, full moon. Offering, vocal memory, voluntarily surrendered. Time of visitation, 3:33 a.m. Memory devoured. Identity fractured. It cannot remember the pact. That was my handwriting. That was my name signed beneath it. I'd given away the memory. On purpose. I staggered back, the realization sinking in like a slow, icy tide. This thing, this silhouette, it didn't choose me randomly. I had called it once. Repeatedly. Welcomed it into my world. And then, for some reason, I tried to forget. But it didn't forget me. And now it was back to collect. I barely slept after reading the journal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, me, in that candlelit basement, surrounded by strangers. A circle. A chant. And that thing, stepping through the dark like it had always belonged. I didn't remember performing the ritual, but my handwriting didn't lie. That entry, memory devoured, meant I wanted to forget. Why? What did I see that made me erase it? I tried reaching out to others I knew from that time in my life, old college friends, exes, anyone who might have been in those circles with me. Most didn't answer. One did. Riley. We hadn't spoken in almost a decade. But when I called and said my name, there was a pause. Then a whisper. It found you, didn't it? I froze. She told me she'd escaped it once. That's why she changed her name, dropped off social media, moved 3 times in 4 years. Because once you're marked, it doesn't stop until it finishes what it started. And that, it isn't one thing. It's many. It wears the same shape for you so your mind doesn't crack, she said. But there are others in its shadow. Watching. Waiting. What did we do? I asked. Riley was silent for a long time. Then, we didn't just call it through. We fed it. It needed anchors. Souls to bind to this world. And the pact, it required 7. 7 what? People. Volunteers. We were the first 6. I felt my stomach turn cold. Who was the 7th? You. I couldn't speak. My mind reeled. You were the anchor, she said. The tether. But you backed out. At the last second. Broke the chain. That's why you gave up your memory, so you wouldn't feel the guilt. I heard her voice tremble. And now it's finishing the ritual without your consent. I asked if there was a way to stop it. She only said one thing before hanging up. Check the back of the book. I flipped to the final page of the journal. There was no writing. Just a single pressed fingerprint in dried black ink. Mine. And beneath it, a sentence burned into the page as if by fire. 7 must become 1. Reclaim what you gave. Or let us in. And in that moment, I finally remembered something. Not a ritual. Not a face. A scream. Mine. From the moment I saw what was truly stepping through. That scream echoed in my skull for hours. Not because of what I saw that night, no, not exactly, but because I remembered what it felt like to know. To understand, for one awful second, what waited behind the veil I'd helped pull open. The thing we called through that night wasn't some folklore demon. It wasn't even a ghost in the traditional sense. It was an echo. An ancient echo. A shape that filled whatever fear you poured into it. A devourer of memory, of self. And I'd brought it here. I had been the anchor. The 7th. That night, after reclaiming that lost memory, the dreams changed. Instead of waking at 3:33 a.m., I began dreaming of that hour, fully immersed in that same bedroom, but drenched in a darkness so complete it seemed to bleed into the edges of reality. In the dream, I wasn't frozen anymore. I could move. And I did. I stood up. Faced the silhouette. And for the first time, I walked toward it. Each step sent a cold spike up my spine, like I was walking deeper into something I couldn't climb back out of. And the figure didn't move. Just watched. Waited. When I stood within arm's reach, it leaned down, its head close to mine, and whispered a single word into my ear. A name. My name. Not the one I use now. Not the name I've signed on forms or spoken aloud for years. But my true name. The one I'd given up during the ritual. The name they used when calling me the anchor. And when I woke, it was carved into my arm. Not deep, barely enough to draw blood. But it was there, raw and unmistakable. The same jagged handwriting from the journal. That day, I packed everything I could. I left the apartment. Booked a motel hours away. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. It didn't help. At 3:33 a.m. that night, the lights in the motel flickered. The television turned on by itself, static humming across the screen. And then, a reflection appeared on the screen. Not of me. It was the thing. But this time, it had a face. Mine. Not as I was now, but twisted. Skin too tight. Eyes wide and hollow. A mouth that stretched too far, lips moving in sync with the static like it was speaking through white noise. I unplugged the TV. Threw it across the room. The screen still played. And the static whispered. One must remain behind. One must remember everything. Then it blinked off. The silence was worse than the noise. I couldn't stay in that motel after what happened. I needed answers, real ones. Not whispers from screens or memories I wasn't sure were mine. I went back to the only place that might have them. The house where we performed the ritual. It took hours of driving and nearly an hour more of pacing through dense woods before I found it. Just as I remembered it, half buried in the trees, rotted porch, shutters hanging loose like broken wings. A forgotten place. But it hadn't aged. That was the first thing I noticed. 10 years gone, and the house looked exactly the same. Not preserved, paused. Like time had no hold here. Inside, the air was stale and wet, like something had died and kept rotting in slow motion. The basement door was already open, the stairs yawning below like a throat. I descended with the book in hand. At the bottom, the chalk circle was still there, faded but visible. Candles, melted to stubs. And in the center, a mirror, covered in a sheet. I don't know what told me to pull the sheet away. Maybe I thought I'd see myself. Maybe I was hoping for something human. What I saw instead. The reflection was wrong. It showed me in the circle, but not just me. Behind me, the silhouette loomed, taller than it had ever been, its hand resting gently on my shoulder like a parent guiding a child. And I was smiling. In the mirror, my eyes were black. Mouth wide. I wasn't scared, I was willing. This wasn't a haunting. It was a reunion. And then the mirror cracked. Not shattered. Cracked, a perfect fracture running from the top left corner to the base. A single line, like a seal breaking. I felt it immediately. The air changed. The circle pulsed faintly. Something had been waiting for me to come back. And I had just let it know I was here. I tried to leave, but the stairs were gone. Not physically, but I couldn't find them. The basement had changed. Now it had a door at the far end. A door with my name carved into it. Not the name I use now. The true one. And from behind it came the sound I'd feared since the first night this all began. The slow, dragging breath of something old. Something patient. Something that had been waiting to finish what I started. My hand hovered over the doorknob, slick with sweat. The breathing behind it wasn't rhythmic, it mimicked rhythm. Like it was trying to remember how lungs worked. Each inhale was a gasp, a learning curve. Each exhale sounded like wine through a broken flute. I wanted to run. I wanted to wake up and find out none of this was real. But I knew, this was the waking world. The dream was everything before. I turned the knob. The door didn't creak. It didn't resist. It opened smoothly, like it had been opened many times before. And what lay beyond? It was the room. The room. The same one from the footage. From the dreams. From that flickering tape on the night vision camera. A mirror of my bedroom, only not. The proportions were wrong. The angles bent subtly outward. Like the room had been drawn from memory by someone who didn't quite understand human geometry. And there, in the center, was me. Not a reflection. Me. Eyes closed. Lying in bed. Breathing slow and deep. A perfect imitation of my real body, except something was wrong with its skin. Too pale. Too smooth. Wax-like. Above it, the silhouette hung again, suspended from nothing, its arms folded across its chest. It looked down at my sleeping doppelganger and whispered, "Soon." I stepped forward. The air grew thick, electric. Every part of my body screamed to leave now, but I needed to know the truth. The figure turned to me, finally acknowledging me directly. And then, it opened. Not like a mouth. Like a door. A vertical seam down its front pulled apart, revealing not organs or light, but faces. Mine. Dozens of them. In pain, in joy, in terror. Every version of myself that could have been. Every self I shed to become the anchor. And behind those faces, a void. Deep. Familiar. That was what I called through. Not a demon. Not a ghost. A collection. A place that wears skin like memories. That feeds on selves. That offers power in exchange for erosion. And I had been its favorite. The silhouette stepped aside, and I saw my sleeping double start to stir. It was waking up. Replacing me. Taking the last piece of the pact. And I had to choose, reclaim my place, or let it finish becoming me. It wasn't a metaphorical choice. The thing lying in the bed, myself, was breathing harder now. Its chest rising and falling in slow, unnatural waves. Every inhale sounded like it was trying to learn my lungs. Every twitch, a rehearsal of being me. I took a step closer. The figure, the silhouette, watched silently, its countless faces folding back into darkness. It didn't speak. It didn't have to. The room was filled with a thought, a pressure I couldn't place, like a whisper pressing directly against the inside of my skull. Take it back. Or let us keep it. The sleeping doppelganger looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Like a wax sculpture left under a heat lamp, barely clinging to its shape. I leaned in, trying to see if it would respond to touch, to my presence. Its eyes shot open. Black. No iris. No white. Just void. And it smiled. Not a kind smile. A smile that said, "You're too late." I grabbed its wrist, cold, pliable, like wet paper, and tried to pull it out of the bed. It didn't resist. It melted. Fingers turned to ash, skin folded back. The body collapsed inward like it was never built to last, never real. And I felt it happen. A shift. It went into me. All at once, memories I hadn't lived, moments I'd never experienced, choices I didn't make, all rushing into my mind. Other versions of me. Other lives. Other endings. I collapsed to the floor. The silhouette was gone. The bedroom, gone. Just blackness. And the voice again, now clearer, deeper, ancient. You chose. You returned. Now remember what we gave. I gasped and found myself in my own bed. The real one. Morning light streamed through the blinds. It was 6:44 a.m. I sat up slowly. Everything felt normal. But the journal was still on the nightstand. The cameras were still rolling. And carved into the inside of my wrist were the words. We are still inside you. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't check my phone. I didn't eat. I just sat at the edge of my bed, staring at those words on my wrist. We are still inside you. They didn't hurt. They didn't bleed. They weren't inked or carved with any tool. It was like my skin itself had grown them. The cameras had caught nothing during the night. Or rather, they'd caught too much. The footage looped. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the screen went black. But not like before. This time it blinked in rapid frames, images too fast to catch unless you slowed the video down frame by frame. So I did. And what I found was my face. But warped. Each flash showed a new version, smiling, screaming, aging backward, turning to ash, stretching into shapes no face should ever take. And always, just behind me, hands. Not touching. Hovering. Inside me. Not physically. spiritually. Like they were reaching through some veil from a place just inches beneath my skin. I looked in the mirror. At first, everything seemed normal. But then I blinked. And for a split second, my reflection didn't. It just kept watching me. No smile. No twitch. Just perfect stillness. I reached up, slowly, touched my cheek. My reflection did the same, but not in sync. It was always a fraction late. A glitch. A shadow of intent. And then it whispered. The glass didn't move. The sound wasn't in the room. It was in my head. You were meant to hold us. You're just a door we made forget it was a door. The image rippled. My reflection peeled open, revealing layers beneath, other reflections. Other lives. Each one screaming to be remembered, clawing to the surface. I staggered back. And for the first time since this began, I saw the silhouette standing inside the mirror. Not behind me. Inside. Trapped. Watching. Waiting. Because now I was the tether. That night, I didn't bother setting an alarm. I didn't need to. I woke up, of course, at 3:33 a.m. But this time, I wasn't lying in bed. I was standing. In front of the mirror. Fully dressed. Eyes wide open. Breath steady. And I had no memory of getting there. The room was still. Too still. Like time was pressing pause just for me. In the mirror, my reflection smiled. I didn't. It tilted its head. I stood straight. It whispered, "You're not in control anymore." I stepped back. The reflection stepped forward. Pressed a hand against the inside of the glass. And something began pressing back from inside my chest. A bulge. Small at first. Then larger. As if fingers were pushing from within, straining against bone and skin like a curtain wanting to tear. I stumbled, breath caught in my throat. That's when the lights began to drip. Not flicker. Drip. Each bulb melted like wax, pooling on the floor in black puddles that hissed with cold steam. The walls warped outward like they were breathing, slow, labored, hungry. My phone buzzed. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. One notification. Live camera feed, bedroom 3:33 a.m. I tapped it. The feed showed me, still asleep in bed. But I wasn't there. I was awake. Standing. Watching. Unless. I wasn't. I turned back to the mirror. And saw nothing. No reflection. Just the room behind me, empty. The camera buzzed again. The sleeping version of me in the feed sat up. Opened its eyes. And looked directly into the lens. Then mouthed. "Let me back in." My body went numb. My vision swam. I realized then, the pact wasn't broken. It was only evolving. And something had reversed. What had been inside the mirror, was now in me. And I was now the one watching. I stopped sleeping. Didn't matter, my body still moved. Sometimes I'd wake up with dried mud on my hands, or bruises on my feet like I'd walked for miles. But I never remembered leaving the room. The cameras showed nothing. That's the cruel trick. When you're the thing being worn, the footage always goes dark. I spent most days now staring at the mirror, waiting for the reflection to come back. It didn't. Instead, the glass became a window. It showed me other places. Other versions of myself. One, in a hospital, screaming silently at a nurse who couldn't see him. One, curled in a fetal position in a burning forest, whispering numbers into the soil. One, floating in a room with no gravity, no walls, only endless stars and the sound of something wet crawling nearby. each version mouthing the same thing when they saw me. We took turns. Now it's yours. I looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. That should have scared me, but it didn't. Because I was changing. I saw it first in the reflection of a spoon, the way my eyes didn't dilate in the light. The way my breath no longer fogged the mirror. I was becoming the vessel. The watcher. They had used me as a bridge once, and I'd run from it. Fought it. Now, I was the thing the next you would see at 3:33 a.m. That silhouette at the edge of the bed? That used to be someone too. They're inside me now. Waiting. Like I was. The only thing left to decide was who I'd visit first. Last night, the transformation completed. I didn't feel it. There was no grand moment, no scream, no pain. Just silence, total, absolute, and then a click inside my chest, like a lock turning. I stood in my room, but it wasn't my room anymore. It was cleaner. Older. The walls were blank. The windows were black. And the bed was neatly made, sheets tight as hospital corners. In the center was a boy, couldn't have been more than 10, sleeping with his back turned. I stepped forward. Not because I wanted to, but because that's what it does. The thing I've become. The thing I let in. My steps made no sound. The boy stirred. Slowly, he turned over, and our eyes met. He didn't scream. Not right away. He stared at me, like he recognized something. Like I was a shadow he'd seen before, in dreams, or from the corner of his eye when the hallway light flickered. Then he whispered, voice shaking, "I know you." And I knew then, it had started again. The cycle. The tether. He'd been marked. Maybe by accident, maybe by fate. But he'd seen me. And now, the process would begin. The waking at 3:33. The silhouette at the foot of the bed. The camera catching shapes it couldn't explain. The slow unraveling of reality. This time, I wouldn't be in the footage. I'd be the one watching. The boy blinked. I vanished. Back into the walls. The dark. The waiting. Because that's how it works, isn't it? One becomes the watcher. And the watcher always finds someone new. So if you're reading this, if you've woken at 3:33, just once, without reason, check your camera. Check the corners. And never, ever look at the mirror too long. Because next time, when you blink, I might be standing there. The end.